Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Quantum Health Connection podcast. I am Heather Crimson, and I'm here with my co-host Vanessa Baldwin. And we are very, very excited today to present to you an interview with Robert Gourlay. He is the owner of the company that sells products. They're called M.App.Sc, and they are water devices that help to revitalize your water from dead water to living water. Robert, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Heather and Vanessa. Thank you for the invitation.
Yes, we're so excited to chat with you about water, all things water today. So tell us, how did you get involved in wanting to research water or learn more about water? Like, what's the passion there and the purpose behind that?
I guess my passion started in my childhood days as growing up on a farm on a pristine river and I now live on this river. I managed to buy land here when I was 33 and get back to this environment. So I grew up on this pristine river that I could swim in, I could fish in it, I could raft in it, I could skim stones across this river. And also we had close by some rainforest with beautiful waterfalls. And, water has always been part of my soul energy, you might say. And but I really got interested with reading about water, and I, got into Schauberger eventually, Victor Schauberger, and his work. So he discovered that when they straightened out the Rhine and the Danube and other rivers in Germany, the water levels dropped by about 10 metres. That's because they took all the banks out and just straightened it up for shipping. And he said then, if this is in the 1930s, that the charge in the water changed from a negative charge to a positive charge. The water lost its insulation. He meant it lost its capacitance to hold a negative charge, and it lost its magnetic levitation. And this magnetic levitation was the capacity of a river for self-cleaning. And so that really got me interested, because of all the books I'd read about structured water, no one was talking about, the negative charge in bulk water in the river systems. So as you know, it's been popularized by Professor Pollock, in terms of celled water. So most people know that the water around your cells is in a gel form and it carries a negative charge, but no one was talking about the bulk water, which is the most important, and the water that, we should be drinking. And given that this is what our ancestors drank, and life seems to be so dependent on water and light.
Yes.
So I thought it was about time someone started paying attention to the water that's in nature and the water we should be drinking, because at a cellular level, our cells run on a negative charge. And if the negative charge starts dropping back down towards zero or positive, that's when you're in a disease zone. So that's how I got started, and that's where I'm at today with my devices.
Ooh, that's a great overview. Thank you. Just for our listeners' sake and kind of as a preface to the episode, if you wouldn't mind giving us like a mini glossary overview, like what is living water, dead water, bulk water, structured water, and so the basics, right? So then going forward, we know what those terms refer to.
Right. So first of all, let me describe what structured water is. So structured water, by definition, will have a number of properties. And I think this is important because there's a lot of marketing out there about and claims about structured water. And we need to understand actually what structured water is in nature and why water is self-cleaning in its most natural state. So the first thing is you need to be able to demonstrate that it's got a negative charge. Now, my devices produce a permanent negative charge. So there are ways of knocking it out, of course, like a microwave oven, and we know that reverse osmosis and pretty harsh treatment of water will destroy the negative charge in water. The water, if you put it into a container, it will have a blue colour. Now, this is a characteristic of water with a negative charge. So if you actually take, for example, when I take water out of a groundwater bore on my property and put it through my device, it takes on a light blue color. So this is a characteristic of water with a negative charge. And, you know, if you have one of my devices on your house and you fill your bathtub up, it'll be a blue color.
That's cool.
So the other thing it will have is what we call cavitation. It'll have tiny, tiny bubbles in it. So these are really gas bubbles, and you know, I believe that these gas bubbles have this capacity to encase chemicals and particularly and probably outgas them out of the water. So this is probably the way that water is self-cleaning. The water will also have a crystalline structure. So I've just had my water measured in a laboratory over in Germany and produced beautiful crystalline structures in the water. So it should have a crystalline structure, so it should be able to demonstrate that it has this structure. It will have a higher surface tension. So this is also quite important because when you use this water, say, in agriculture, you'll get more contact with the soil or with the plant, particularly if you've got a biological formulation in. So higher surface tension. It will also have antioxidant or exclusion zone properties. That is, the water has a capacity to determine the rites of passage of what comes in and what goes out.
Wow.
So, and I've already demonstrated that, and I'll show you an example. So in that bottle there are blueberries I put in there in 2017. You see the water is clear.
2017. That's crazy.
Yes, and here's another one of what blueberries put in there in 2016. So of a hole next to it, if you compare that with just an ordinary urban water, that's the difference.
Which one?
Right. So the one that's all darker and not seeing the blueberries is the one that doesn't have a negative charge, right? And the
doesn't
one
have a negative charge. You can see how it's lost its magnetic levitation. If I put the two together,
it's lower. It's not as high.
It's lower.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's without the top coming off. So every experiment we've done, it's lost its magnetic levitation. So when I say antioxidant, I mean it doesn't lose oxygen. The reason those blueberries are in there in their pristine state, you know, 8 years later, is because of the antioxidant capacity of the water. So the other thing about structured water, it has a capacity to eliminate pathogenic microbes. So we've done many experiments. For example, E. Coli just can't exist. You put them in one end, they don't come out the other end. So we've put high-level pollution water like piggery water through one end with well over 2,500 units of E. coli, and laboratories have been unable to detect E. coli at the other end. So they're the main properties, but I guess in science, you can go to some laws in physics. So the first law of thermodynamics says you cannot destroy matter, you cannot destroy energy, you can only change it or transform it to another form or state. Well, that's what I've done with my device. I've just transformed the water, you know, by getting a permanent negative charge in it. And so the water goes back to its most natural state. So this is why filters in a way don't work, because they just become, you can't destroy the matter and you can't destroy the energy. And all you do is accumulate the water, accumulate the toxins, I should say, in the filter. And so if you then go back to Einstein's theory of E equals mc squared, well, if mass increases, well, energy increases. They're equal. So if the mass...
I'm going to pause you for a second. So the energetic imprint of, say, the toxins in the water is what you're saying that a filter cannot remove. Is that my understanding?
Precisely.
Oh, that is really profound. I don't know if you know this, but Heather and I are both homeopaths. So we understand how water holds energy, frequency, memory, right? So now you have, say, I don't know, E. coli or birth control or something like that. The water still, even though you filtered it out, it's still holding the energy of and the frequency of those toxins, even though you filtered it.
Actually, in fact, if you just measure what's in a filter, we've done this recently. I had a scientist that I know measured it, and she found the amount of lead in her filter was 10 times greater than the water coming in. So you can now understand that the amount of energy coming into your body from that lead is 10 times greater. So if the lead is 10 times greater, well, perhaps the mercury, the cadmium, the arsenic, the aluminium, all the PFAS, PFOS chemicals, glyphosate, everything else is now tenfold greater. So energetically, every time you drink water from, you're receiving a toxic energy 10 times greater. Now, I often say to people, the most important thing to remember is that your body is the most perfect filter detox system. This is why you were born with a liver to process your blood 38 times a day to clean it and get rid of toxins, out through your elimination system, of which we've got many. So, I mean, why would you want to increase the amount of toxic energy coming in when you've already got a perfectly designed system to do this? So, again, this is where it gets back to maintaining good health. If you maintain good health, maintain hydration and have, a fairly clean diet. Like I live in a property where I grow most of my own food. And I must say I live in a pretty good restaurant here. So I've got no need to go out and out to restaurants at all. So we've got the best water, fresh air and clean food. So, but I think there is a lot of misunderstanding about what a filter does. It doesn't make something disappear.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I've never really thought it from an energetic perspective before, and that really just kind of blew my mind, actually. And I've heard you say that when you're filtering the water, also that it's now doesn't have a negative charge. Now that water has a positive charge, right? Am I correct with that?
Yeah, this does apply to some filters. So we've tested some, and we got the worst results with a filter system called reverse osmosis, which seems to produce a very high positive charge. The minimum at change was 70%. Well, we're looking at changes of up to 150% change in the charge. So, it's equivalent to you putting your water in a microwave oven and zapping it with radiation. So your body is not designed to take in positive charge. And if you do, you have to use your energy of your body to convert that positive charge to negative charge. Now, Professor Korokov, University of St. Petersburg in Russia, told me once, this is back in 2008, that most people are expending 50% of their energy every day converting positive charge energy coming into their body, and a lot of that's coming from their filter, of course, into a negative charge. So imagine what you could do with the other 50% of your energy if you didn't have to be converting positive charge, water, and food. So one thing also we now know from is, and after I met Korokov, he was talking about, he was actually doing a presentation on, when you die, it takes 60 hours for your energy to leave your body. Because again, this law of thermodynamics. So all the energy you've accumulated in your life from day one, your mum's womb, you can't destroy it. So it's got to go somewhere. All the water and minerals in your body go back to the earth, but your energy has to go somewhere. So I asked him, well, what happens to water, food? And he said, well, you go away and find out for yourself. And I did. I eventually developed a device to measure the energy of water. So I took water from my pristine river near my property, and sure enough, 60 hours later, after I took it out, the charge was turning to positive.
Wow.
So I took an apple off the tree on my property and started measuring the energy coming out, and sure enough, at 60 hours, everything went zip.
So
So
60 hours and it loses the charge, right? So
yes,
if you buy, I'm just make sure I'm wrapping my brain around this for the audience. So if you buy produce at the food store, right?
yes,
And that's maybe, especially if it's shipped from, even if it's local, but even especially if it's shipped far away, right? When by the time you get home and eat it, it's not going to have negative charge anymore. It's going to have a positive charge because it's probably, you
yes.
might eat it right away. Maybe that squash is going to sit on your counter for a little while or something like that, right? So it will have a positive charge, correct?
It will. And if you actually immerse it
Mm.
into water with a negative charge, a permanent negative charge it is, guess what? A principle in physics called entrainment, you will entrain the negative charge from the water and it will equalize across into the food. So the first one we actually tried was some celery, and literally within about 30 minutes to an hour had restored the negative charge into the celery. So now you've got food that is back to its almost pristine state of negative charge. And as long as you eat it within the next 60 hours, well, you've been trained negative charge to your body.
Wow.
So your body no longer has to be converting that, to negative charge, because the more negative charge you bring into your body, the greater the negative charge of your cell and therefore your cell capacitance. So you do this by drinking water with a negative charge, you drink food with a negative charge, you get adequate sunlight because infrared light gives you negative charge, and of course grounding if you're grounding on the earth. But we also now know, and Krokoff alerted me to this, if you shower in structured water, it's equivalent to you grounding yourself on the earth. And grounding yourself will increase the amount of negative charge coming into your body by 5-fold compared with wearing shoes. So showering in structured water removes a significant amount of positive charge from your body and puts negative charge in the same way that grounding does.
Nice.
So how, Robert, how is, say, the negative charge in water, what is that compared to the people who buy the big machines to make their water alkaline? How is that different or the same, or what is that?
Well, personally, I think there's a lot of marketing out there that my starting point in considering all of these factors is to say, well, does it exist in nature?
Mm-hmm.
Now, alkaline water does exist in nature because there's waters that are high in magnesium bicarbonate, but that's a natural water. Now, I've actually measured alkaline water, and it has a very high positive charge on it.
Mm. Yeah.
And so, also, if you drink alkaline water, it's going to be acidic within a second of drinking it, because as soon as it enters your stomach acid is going to turn it acidic.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't understand the point of drinking alkaline water at all, given that it's got a positive charge and it's going to be acidic within seconds of drinking it. So, I mean, there's a lot of other marketing out there that I think, people need to question, relating to deuterium depletion. I mean,
Mm.
hydrogen is critical in your body. So why would you knock hydrogen out of your water when your body needs hydrogen? And then you've got someone else, selling hydrogen waters. It becomes very confusing for
Yes.
people.
It is. It's like
Um,
I just would love for you to break that down because it's like, okay, now we know, like, all right, how to, because obviously the best water we could probably drink is from a natural spring, right? If we were able to go
yeah, it
harvest from a
is.
natural spring and we could actually do that, that would be great. I don't have one available to me where I live that's clean or good, so that's not something I can do. So first I was like, oh, we're going to reverse osmosis our water. And then I'm like, oh, then I have to add minerals back to my water. So that's
Yeah.
annoying. And that doesn't make sense to me. And I don't like the taste of minerals in the water. Like when they're, especially in electrolytes, when they have a salty taste to it, that doesn't make sense to me because it seems like I'm drinking salt water, which doesn't
Hmm.
seem right. And then I also feel like, okay, I'm going to buy spring water in a bottle, right? Now, what you just told me is that spring water that I bought, which is clean and has minerals and it's from a spring and it's in glass, so it's super clean. However, it's not going to have a net negative charge. It's going to have a
No, it
positive
won't.
charge because it's greater than 60 hours away from its natural, source. Correct?
Well, that's right. So, look, if you don't have access to a natural spring, as I do, I've got river water and I've got beautiful spring water on my property. But, my bottle top device, this one here, if you just put your spring water through that, by just you do an anti-clockwise spin, to get the vortex going.
That nice vortex, right? Which is how it actually is a part of the reason why it gets a negative charge back into it is the vortexing.
Well, the vortex, yes, but all the action happens just there. So the vortex in itself doesn't produce the negative charge.
Okay.
It took me a long time to work this out, but actually I decided to do it the same way as Schauberger did it. And they sit by the river and basically ask the river, well, how do you do it?
I love that.
It became pretty obvious to me. I'm sitting there because, and probably because of my science background, I had studied magnetism at university, and I realised later on that everything they taught me about magnetism at uni was useless, totally useless.
Yep.
But anyway, I realised that the river is encased in the Earth's magnetism, as is the ocean. And also, these open water systems are receiving electromagnetic energy from light, from sunlight, moonlight, starlight. So the magnetism had to be the critical part. So my devices, I had to reinvent everything about magnetism to get a permanent negative charge into it. And the inline devices, it all got down to geometry. Again, because I studied sacred geometry, I knew that things like Golden mean ratio and a few other things like that were critical. But once I'd worked out the orientation, the numbers, and the sequence or spacing, I worked out how to do it. And I learned from one of Professor Korokov's PhD students the relationship between magnetism and copper. So that came into play as well. So, it's all about getting the magnetic energy back into it. And also our bodies are a magnetic system. So, this is why we have magnetite in our brains. Probably if we didn't have that, we'd walk outside and walk around in circles. We'd be completely lost. We wouldn't know where we were. We wouldn't be able to navigate in a car unless our bodies were magnetic. So it's all to do with the magnetism. So I think a lot of these other systems that are out there have lost the big picture. And I think this is why we need to go back to and ground with nature and find out how does water actually work in nature? And how does it maintain its integrity in nature? And these are the critical things, because water in its most pristine state has this great capacity to remove waste or toxins. It can clean itself literally within tens or hundreds of meters in a pristine state. And so this would lead us to looking at why in our urban systems are we throwing chemicals into water? Why is it that we fill the water up with fluoridation and chlorination and alum and, well, I think it's because there's a chemical approach to water. So water's been hijacked by chemists and engineers and the big infrastructure system. So, but it's not about that. If you attend any conference to do structured water, you'll find it's all about the physics of water. And the physics includes its magnetic state, its charge, it's the electricity of water. That's what it's about. In fact, we could reinvent all of our urban water systems literally by just putting a negative charge on it. That's all we'd have to do.
Wow.
And every community would save billions and billions of dollars the waste, of maintaining current urban systems is massive. But it only helps, big water, big chemistry and big engineering. They're the only ones who gain from this, and they produce toxic water.
Yeah, and unfortunately, most of the municipal water is that exactly what you're describing. So, Robert, kind of as a like an environmental scientist, your approach has been, like Victor Schauberger said, you're basically emulating the natural process of what moves water, what it is, the qualities of living water, which is water in its natural state, right? How that happens that the water is that way. And your devices, what you've created, tell me if I'm getting this right, your devices basically help restore the water to its living state from not being structured to structured, from having a positive charge to a negative charge. You figured out the physics of how to do that, and that's what your devices do. So, for example, where I'm at, I've heard that there's a high arsenic level in this water. And yes, I've been getting like reverse osmosis, but now I'm kind of freaked out about that. But so the water in this municipality, if I were to use your device, and I don't know if even if the one you just showed us with the smaller one bottles, what exactly happens to that arsenic or whatever else is in the water? You're saying they become neutralized or they become encased by the gas bubbles, or help me understand. Could I just use that device you showed us and then tap water, put it through that, and then it's safe from the arsenic isn't there?
Well, this is right. Let me just show people first of all. So if you live in an apartment, you've got an option to put that under your sink or on your shower, right?
Mhm.
If you live in a house, well, you've got a device like this to put on. So that just sits between the meter and the house.
Mhm.
So what this does is produce what Professor Pollock, would call exclusion zone water.
Right. Which excludes, right?
That's right. It determines the rites of passage of things. So,
Perfect.
so let me just get now to arsenic. Well, firstly, arsenic in a soil can be up to about 20% of the minerals in a soil anyway. And arsenic does have health benefits. It's not all bad. If you just Google arsenic health benefits, you'll find out exactly what they are. And there's some actually very interesting health benefits. But your body needs to receive the arsenic in a particular energy state, let me put it that way. So when it's taken up by a plant and you eat that in the plant, let's assume the plant is fresh, right? Within the 60 hours of harvesting, your body knows what to do with that arsenic, and it also knows how to get rid of excess. So your body is always, and your blood are always trying to maintain homeostasis. And as long as you're drinking enough water and staying hydrated, your body will take what it needs in terms of minerals, particularly the salts, and it will eliminate anything in excess, including arsenic, lead, mercury, aluminium, so forth. It will do this. Personally, I wouldn't worry too much about the arsenic in water, as long as as that arsenic is encased in a negative charge when you drink it. I mean, ideally, you'd probably want to find a spring water that is low in this, but is mineralized, because water is hungry for negative charge and it's hungry for minerals. You don't want to deplete something of its minerals. Well, you don't want to deplete water of its minerals, I should say. So, of course, that is the natural state. It's always trying to, do that. But also, water is also trying to maintain a high level of what we'll call crystallization. So we know when we add frequency to structured water, the complexity of the crystal structure increases. And so water is always striving to reach its highest level of complexity of crystal structure. And you can do this by putting your structured water out in sunlight,
I was going to ask
Well,
you that question. Can sunlight structure the water? Because you hear people say that it can, but then I was thinking as you were talking, not to interrupt you, that wait a minute, it's in this glass bottle. It's not going to get the magnetism at the same time, which
that's
I
right.
don't, I don't know if that makes a difference or not. But can sunlight structure water again? Because it can structure water in us, right? The infrared structures the water in us. So can
Yeah.
it structure the water in my bottle? However, the glass is going to block the infrared. So there's lots of nuance here, right?
Well, this is it. See, the water in your blood is moving around your body 38 times a day. So it's vortexing and moving.
Right.
Now, this goes into the whole concept. The heart isn't a pump. That's another story. But your blood vortexes around your body. It's moving all the time like a pristine stream. So when the water is moving, it has current, right?
Yes.
So by definition, so your blood is carrying negative charge. It's only when that starts to drop that you've got problems. So it's the same. If you put water out in the sun and it's still, it needs to have a permanent negative charge to hold that frequency. So if you put water out there and it doesn't have a permanent negative charge, the entrainment of that frequency is going to be very temporary. It could be hours, but it will not be any greater than 60 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So
A permanent, right? Like your device is a permanent negative charge.
that's right. So
The difference.
so I've already done this. This experiment's already been done by a colleague of mine in Germany, and I've seen the crystal structure from him trained like hundreds of frequencies into it, and the crystal structure that came from it was just perfect. It was a beautiful crystal structure. So, and this is part of my research work in going into 2025 is the entrainment of frequency. I already know that my bottle top device, this one, that's already been tested to hold frequency. It will permanently hold frequency. So we know we can entrain frequency into that device and it will hold it and entrain it. We also found it entrained. So that device I just showed you is 24 karat gold plated. It also entrained the gold, frequency of gold into the water as well.
I was just going to ask that question. So it's going to pick up on that and hold that as well.
Yes.
Interesting.
So and we know from the work of Emoto and a New Zealand woman,
Veda Austin.
Yes. That water has this great capacity for communication with its environment, including you. So if you talk to it, and you can get the same response if you talk to your plants as well. So, so water is responsive to good vibrations.
Yes, I talk to my water. I'm like that weird old lady who talks to her water, and I put like paper like post-its underneath it. Right now, my water's sitting on the word love. Like I do that. I talk to my water. I honestly, and when I take homeopathy as a homeopath, I talk to the water before because I'm trying to set the intention and I'm trying to imprint the intention of what's going to happen. Even when I give homeopathy to my children or my family, I'm always doing that because I understand that water holds that energy and frequency and that we're basically just a walking antenna to take in all the information.
We're a water antenna. Our 99.9% of the molecules in our body are water molecules, and we are just water antennas. So, our environment and the people we have around us, everything we have around us, we're an antenna for that energy. So this is why we have to have choices in life about where we live and perhaps the company we keep. But the water is the key. And this is why we need to pay more attention to the energy and the physics of water and forget about the chemistry. The chemistry to your cell is irrelevant. The only thing that's relevant to a cell is the charge, because when that charge falls, you're into the zone of disease.
Yep. Low voltage equals disease.
Yes.
Yes, 100%.
So is it proprietary information how your devices make the water have a permanent negative charge? That's what you've figured out as far as the physics of it, the frequency, right? What is it that makes it be permanent? But I'm assuming that's proprietary though. But I still want to ask.
Well, Heather, I have to tell you that just that little bottle top device took me 6 years to perfect it.
Wow.
To start with. And the day that we started measuring the negative charge coming out of it, and that it seemed to stay and stay, it was going beyond the 60 hours, and it was what we'd call a eureka moment. And look, personally, I can't actually tell you how it works, other than we got the magnet thing right in terms of, that. But I don't think we fully understand how nature works, and I don't think we're going to completely entangle how magnetism works in our body and with water. I think that's probably for future generations to work this out. But all I can say is that I was granted 4 Australian innovation patents based on the proof I had to provide that it had a permanent negative charge, and that the device would entrain and permanently hold frequency, and that it would knock out pathogenic microbes. So I had all this proof. But the answer to the question is, I'm not completely sure. All I know is my design, which is proprietary. But anyway, the key thing is that you'll be able to drink water that's got a permanent negative charge.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. So now heat and cold does not affect it. So if I got the whole house filter, because I know you have a whole house filter, my husband says, well, if it goes through the hot water heater, that's not a problem, correct?
It's not a problem. And so we've heated the water up and we're taking it down to ice blocks, and it makes perfect ice blocks for whiskey, I can tell you. And if you put wine through this bottle top device, it will never, ever turn to vinegar.
Ooh. That's amazing.
I think all the vintners need to know about that.
Because of the fact that it's alive, right? It keeps that's crazy.
Precisely. And as soon as you put it through the device, if you then decanter it to a wine decanter and leave it open to the air, it will outgas all the preservatives and the chemicals they put into wine. Then you get wine back to its most natural, pure state, and the taste is entirely different. You'll turn a $5 red into a $50 red, so to speak.
Does this mean no hangover, Robert? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, well, I've actually had people put it this way. 2 things happen. Because, wine is 83% water. So when water is in its structured state, the water molecules, the clusters of water molecules are very small. Like in a structured state, you might have, say, half a dozen, 6 or 7 molecules to a cluster. Whereas in destructured water, like most urban water, you would have probably 20 molecules to a cluster. And this is why you hydrate a lot better by drinking structured water, because you've got smaller clusters that enter the aquaporin of your cells. So when you drink wine that has been structured, after 1 glass of wine, you feel as though you've had 2 because of the fast penetration of the alcohol. Ooh. But I think you end up drinking less, actually, as a result of all this.
Which probably would be a good thing.
But the other thing we know is it seems to put the alcohol into a form that is more easily processed by your liver into an acetyl form. And this is why people say it takes the headache effect away.
Wow.
I'm really curious if you've done any experimentation, because I know that Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, non-native EMFs diminishes our exclusion zone water in our body, right? I think Gerald Pollack found out 15 to 20%. So say you make some of your beautiful permanently negatively charged water and it's next to a Wi-Fi router.
Yeah.
Would that impact it? I'm just curious if you've had any research on that.
Look, there's a couple of elements here. I think our vulnerability to EMF is highly dependent on the level of charge of our cells. So if you can keep your cells up at their steady or ground state, which is about -25, although a cell has to go to -50 to make a new cell, and your heart operates somewhere between -75 and -100 millivolts, and that's why your heart will never get cancer, because cancer will never attack the organ of highest negative charge. Right. And it's a bit like this with EMF. So your vulnerability is highly dependent on how much negative charge water you're drinking and how much negative charge food you're ingesting, how much sunlight, how much grounding, all these things. So you can actually make yourself reasonably bulletproof just by increasing the amount of electrons coming into your body.
Yes, it's all about that balance of electrons versus electron stealers, right? You want to avoid those electron stealers and gather as much electrons as you can, right?
That's right. So, for example, remember I showed you this. Well, this has been sitting in my house now for 8 years, subject to EMF, and it's had no effect.
Because it's protected.
It's protected.
Are you saying you have Wi-Fi in your house?
Yes, I do.
Oh, wow. And it doesn't seem to affect you. Okay.
And it hasn't affected that water, because it does affect water that, if you use normal urban water, that's how it goes. I mean, it's probably entrained enormous amounts of Wi-Fi and EMF.
Because it has no
black
barrier.
And all the,
because it has no barrier, it has no protection. Because I always say
it's got no protection. It's got no negative charge protection.
Because I always try to tell clients, like, exclusion zone water is a barrier it's a battery and a barrier around your cell, right? So this would kind of be the same thing. It's protective to whatever it's with, correct?
Oh, it is. And if you actually get down to the fascia level in your body and collagen, the other thing I say to people is that if you want to maintain the electrical capacity of your body, you need to maintain your collagen pathways, because it's something that's been neglected. When I grew up, I was one of 5 boys actually, and I grew up on a farm where we had no electricity, so my mother could only slow cook. So we had our own beef and sheep and chickens and fish out of the river. So we had slow cooked meat all the time. And I now, looking back, we got a massive amount of collagen. It's probably one reason my mother got us all to 17, where we all had to leave home, and not one of us had been ever taken to a doctor. So, and I believe this was because, at 4:30 every afternoon when we got home from school, we got a big bowl of stew, which was meat and veggies. But I didn't realise at the time we were getting a lot of collagen. I now know, and work done by a guy called Dr. Rath, R-A-T-H. He basically says if you deplete your collagen pathways, you've just opened the door to disease. And I believe it's because you've taken away your body's. Let me explain this way. The collagen is surrounded by EZ water, or is gelled water. So your fascia, and the collagen, is surrounded by this gelled water. And I think, if we only look at biological protection or protection against disease or Wi-Fi or whatever, we have to include collagen in the conversation. And, and you will know that probably since the 1960s, everyone started cooking meat in high heat. It was barbecue, pan-fried, grilled, baked, fried, and they lost the collagen.
Well, now they have the Instant Pots, so it's even worse because you're doing high pressure, short-term cooking, and you don't melt that collagen so it's assimilable, so you can assimilate it into your body, right?
Yeah.
That's right. And if you cook, what we do, my wife and I cook our meat always in a slow cooker. So it's cooked in structured water. And every morning we'll have a cup of broth.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, we have the meat. And actually, we've got our Christmas party for our business here today. And we're all having, and part of it is the slow cooked lamb.
Ooh,
so whenever I run workshops, I always offer slow cooked, lamb or chicken.
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
But the broth is an important part of it. And yeah, it's the collagen is an essential part of you maintaining the negative charge throughout your body, throughout every cell of your body.
Mm-hmm. That's the true anti-aging secret.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Wow.
So,
So
yeah,
many questions.
I know it's been amazing. I'm loving everything that you've had to say, Robert, about the water. And I feel like your childhood was amazing. And the reason why that you also stayed so healthy was probably because you were outside, in the sunlight, grounding and interacting with the microbes and the farm animals, and also getting into that natural water that you had right there. There are so
Yes.
many beautiful things about your childhood, and that beautiful gelatinous meat your mother was making also was important. So amazing. Yeah, it's really great. You had a really good upbringing and a nice childhood there. So if people are okay, they're like, all right, I get this. Net negative charge makes sense. Okay, but they're like still having trouble of wrapping their brain around, like, what about the fluoride? What about this? Like, what about that?
Yeah.
Like, because I know that that's going to be the dissonance, right? For most people, because anybody who's in the health space is like, well, I've got to remove, I got to remove, I got to remove. So I just want to reiterate that one more time. And I know that it's not necessary, like, you've said about how the fluoride is different, right? That in the water, like it's the fluoridine, right? Is that I'm saying that right? Not the fluoride, right? There's like a difference, right? So can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, on the periodic table of minerals, it's described as fluorine, which is a chemical symbol of F, whereas so fluoride is F negative. It's got a negative charge on it. So, but fluoridation is a toxic compound that comes from the processing of aluminium and chemical fertilizer. In fact, on the bag, the powder they pour into your water, it's got the word poison written on it. So it's made up of three elements: fluoride, silica, and sodium.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you threw this into a pristine stream, the pristine stream would take it back to its elemental form. That is fluoride, silica, and sodium. But you no longer have fluoridation because it's just broken the bond between the fluoride, the silica, and the sodium. So you no longer have fluoridation. You no longer have a chemical. You just have elements that are on the periodic table of elements. So,
and when they're in the natural form, are they actually beneficial for us in some way?
Yes. Well, every element on the periodic table in some way is important. That's why it's important to have salt, because salt, a complex salt like Himalayan salt or Celtic salt, has over 90 minerals, and our body requires these minerals every day to function, particularly the electrolyte ones, which the alkaline minerals are what keeps your blood alkaline. So, things like sodium, potassium, magnesium, and these are all important minerals. But at this stage, and this is part of my research for this year, I believe because the water we're producing has all the properties of structured water, and therefore in nature, it's doing what nature does, that it disentangles all chemicals. Now, we still have to prove this, and we can do this by measuring the light emission from a chemical. It'll have a unique signature. So PFAS, PFOS, glyphosate will all have a unique chemical or light signature. So we put that through the device, and we should see it flat line it by the time it comes out the other end. I think, we will prove this. So I don't have that definitive proof now, but given that my water it ticks every other box of all the properties of structured water in nature that I mentioned, like the negative charge, it turns blue, it's got cavitation, it's got crystalline structure, it's got high surface tension, it's antioxidant, it's got exclusion zone. So all of these things, it ticks all those boxes. So it would have to, I believe, be knocking out the chemicals. So I think that it does, and that we'll need to get more proof on this. And I should have that by the end of 25. It's just that a lot of the technology you need to do this, it's not being used in universities these days. And I know Professor Rubik is using some of this. I think she's in Berkeley University, Professor Korokoff and others, using crystalline photography and other things. But trying to identify the light signature of chemical it's not an easy thing to do. And then to measure it, in the water and then at the other end of the device. But we do have some evidence already of putting urban water through the device and seeing these beautiful crystalline structures at the other end, just beautiful. And I think this is really not possible if the water has high levels of toxins, because with the water before, you can see it has no structure whatsoever. It is just, a crystalline mess, so to speak.
Yes.
So anyway, that's just work in progress. This is what science is. It's all about innovation and observing and trying to provide an explanation.
Yeah, I think you're doing.
It'd be wonderful to have you back on when you have all that for round 2, because I think that would be extraordinary and so wonderful to share with our listeners and get it out, the news out there in the world about your findings. It would be incredible.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. And we're just so thankful for the work that you are doing. Like, this is really amazing work that you're doing. And it's something completely different, it makes so much sense. Like, the more I listen to it, the more I'm like, oh, this makes so much sense to me, especially when you understand, net negative charge and that we're electrical beings and all of that. So it just makes so much sense. And I just have to thank you for that. The work that
Wait, I
you're
want to
doing.
say one more thing, Vanessa. Also, we haven't even touched on the spiritual aspects of the whole water consciousness, and
Go for it.
no, I'm just saying that's something we don't have time today, but that's a part of this whole, conversation that we haven't been able to get to, because there's just so much. We're talking about the integrity of the water as far as our physical health, but what does that lead to? That leads to consciousness. So there's a whole nother domain here that I'd love to get to.
Yeah, it does. I think this is a whole new conversation. I'll send you my latest version of my PowerPoint.
I have it, I think, in the email, right, Vanessa? We have it. Yeah.
Yeah. If you go to if it's a link which says water number 4, which is the latest one.
Okay.
I only actually updated it yesterday.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
which one? If you,
I'm gonna
anyway, look, I'll send you a new link anyway.
Okay, that'd be great.
But yes, we need to talk about human consciousness and how this is actually expanded through drinking structured water and expanding the light energy that emits from your body. So the capacity of light to emit from your body is highly dependent on the charge of your cells. So you can increase this by obviously taking a more negative charge. So, but that's a whole new conversation that we could have. And of course, Korokoff has gone into great detail in this as well. And, he's using great crystalline photography to demonstrate this. You're right, it's another conversation to talk about not only the consciousness of humans, but of plants and animals and perhaps down to micro. But I personally think that water has the highest level of consciousness, and humans sit at the bottom of the ladder in that respect.
That's pretty incredible. It really is. Well, Robert, tell people like, I know you can't say that it's going to have this benefit or that benefit, but like getting your device and using your device, maybe what might be some perks, we'll say, that they might experience.
Yeah. Well, I can't make therapeutic claims, and
Yes,
if
understandable.
I did, I mean, the belief police would be around here and have me locked up if I did. So, but I can tell you some observation as a research scientist.
Mhm.
So, because I also, give advice to people about health and well-being, um, the one thing that we have observed is that people who had issues to do with their arteries increasing in calcification, because that's what clogs up your arteries. It's the calcium that's coming from carbohydrates and not having enough boron in your diet to pull the calcium out and put it in your bones. You get calcification.
Mhm.
Now, calcification of organs and systems, and I know in men, calcification of prostate is a big issue as well, as along with arteries. What we have observed, within 2 years of drinking this water, their arteries are crystal clear.
Wow.
Wow.
That's incredible.
And it is. And I actually, in Australia, to renew your driver's license, you've got to have a medical. And last year I turned 75. I'm 76 now. I had to go and get a medical. Well, they didn't have any medical history on me because I don't go and see doctors. I decided that a long, long time ago.
Good for you.
I'm with you. Yeah, good for you.
Safer. That's the safe route.
Yes.
Yeah, so I had to go and see a doctor. So they threw everything at me. They did blood tests, urine tests, ECG, all of those tests. And at the end of the ECG test of my heart, I asked the woman who was doing it, I said, well, how was that? And she said, oh, well, your doctor's going to have to tell you the result. But she said, I can tell you that is very, very good.
Oh, good.
So I've been drinking this water now for 12 years, and it looks though I don't have any blocked arteries.
Mm-hmm.
That's
That's
awesome.
just part of it. I mean, there's so many benefits, right, to how it helps. Basically, if the net negative charge of your body is able to maintain its vitality for a very long time.
It does. I mean, the most common testimony would be people saying it's lifted the fog from my brain, or my urinary tract infections have disappeared. Or people just saying my overall well-being, I feel so much better. Of course, they're showering it. My hair is so much better. My skin is better.
Mhm.
It's just. I think
Gut
once
health,
you lift,
I'm sure gut health is involved in that too as well.
yeah, once you lift the negative charge of your cell, a lot of medical issues disappear. It is that simple,
Yeah.
But no doctor's going to talk to you about water or about the charge of your cell
No.
No, they're not aware of that,
or about
unfortunately.
sunlight or about grounding or.
Mm-hmm.
Or about homeopathy.
That's right.
Exactly. Exactly.
I wanted
So,
to ask you about homeopathy and what are your thoughts about water holding the energy and frequency?
Well,
Because
it does.
homeopathy,
There
yeah.
is no doubt that structured water is probably the perfect medium for homeopathy.
Mm-hmm.
I have no doubt about this, that um, there's nothing better.
ooh,
If you've got a good pure water source, like a good spring water, and it's structured,
Mm.
you've got a basis for holding energy.
mhm.
And you can entrain whatever frequency you like into it then, of course, along with whatever it is, your herbs or minerals, whatever you're using.
Yeah. Mm.
I actually do this in my laboratory. So I've actually made a formulation, which I made for myself, which I call Philosopher's Stone,
Mm.
just by using structured water um, and a number of minerals that most people wouldn't think about, a lot of the rare earth minerals and so forth. So, but along with, plants
Mm.
um, into that. So I think, yeah, structured water is probably going to be the way that homeopathy will go in the future.
Mm. Amazing. To make it instead of using the alcohol-based tinctures and things like
Yes.
that, saying to make it.
That makes
Well,
sense. Yeah,
It does.
absolutely.
That makes a lot of sense. But I wanted to get your opinion too, like how, like, because people will say homeopathy's pseudoscience because of the fact that it's just an energetic imprint. But if you understand that water holds energy, frequency, memory, then it makes complete sense how homeopathy works and how it actually is a substance, even though it's dilute, even though there's nothing really there, it is really there. It's like the same thing with the reverse osmosis before, how the imprint is still there. So it's been a very interesting and enlightening conversation, Robert. So I wanted to ask
well,
you,
yeah,
oh, go
yeah.
ahead.
I just on homeopathy. Look, a Russian scientist called Pravakov back in the 1920s proved that homeopathy worked by training energy into water. And one of our Nobel Prize winners, Luc Montagnier, also proved that.
Yes.
There's adequate proof, for homeopathy. And I don't think we have to go out and try and prove it. I think we have to accept the existing proof and
Yeah.
that water will hold energy. It will. And if you look at the work of Emoto or Veda Austin and those, you know this. It's in training energy.
A
Yeah.
million percent, a million percent. So it's just nice to hear it from you too. So it's amazing. So I'm going to ask you a question that I think most people will know the answer to by now, what you're going to say, but how do you maintain your health? Like, what is the things that you do to maintain your health, basically?
Well, the first thing is living in an environment, out in nature. So surrounding me, I've got a 110-acre property and I'm in the natural bush.
Nice.
My wife and I can sit out the deck this time of the year because we're about to go into summer. We're just about to leave spring into summer. And the only sounds we're hearing are the birds and the frogs. And so surround yourself in nature if you can. Secondly, grow as much food as you can.
Mm.
And eat, organic, fresh food. If you can't eat, get it away. And we have to buy fruit that we can't grow here, of course, because we're in a cool area. We just put it in the structured water. So drinking structured water. Then it gets down to, I guess, maintaining a high level of consciousness, and that is by being open and increasing your awareness. And you can do this through times of tranquility and stillness, which some people seem to have lost, and particularly children these days don't know how to sit down under a tree and just look at nature for a while. So, and I used to do this as a kid. I look back now and think I spent lots of time sitting by the river or down by a waterfall, just looking at nature, and that's how I observe, orchids growing in trees and in the rainforest areas. And so adequate sunlight, I think, is important, and I try and get sunlight throughout the day. Even though whenever I get a break, I try and get out in the sun. I think also having a good hobby, like mine is growing Australian native plants and particularly the really rare ones and Australian native orchids. So you've got to have a hobby of some type. See, so many people I went to school with are now retired, and and I had one guy talk to me the other day. He'd been retired for 15 years, and he's the same age as me. And he said, "When are you going to retire?" Well, I've got no plans of retirement at all. As long as you're enjoying life, there's no reason to disengage from. It depends on what you consider to be work. And I enjoy my work, which is the research, and the engagement with other people. That is really this is uplifting. And if you're taking something forward that has a benefit to others, that is very rewarding too. So you're getting something back. So energetically, you're getting something back. I guess it's the same with you, Heather and Vanessa, that in your work you get some reward from what you do. But if you're in a job not getting a reward, I guess that's a lot. That is different. But mainly, it's just get back to nature, and also back into the way that society or worked. I think we've lost the way that a village would normally work. If we go back generations in a way that a village and people would walk, to get their coffee, so to speak, and have conversations along the way. We've lost so much that is natural to us as humans. We're social beings and we need proper social engagement because that's how we exchange information. It's unfortunate, well, these days we can use the internet to exchange information, which is very good, but there's also a time when we need to, wander around, meet our neighbours or whatever and walk the talk, so to speak.
And rituals and ceremony, and a lot of which have been water-based over the millennia, but getting back to incorporating some of these things to give meaning to our life. So
yes.
I love it all. This has been very, very fascinating and super intriguing and very inspirational and motivating. So where shall people find you, and how do you recommend they start to look into your products?
Or perhaps I can send you some links. My website is www.meawater.com. That's probably a good starting point, or they can email me at rob@meawater.com. But yeah, I get lots of emails every day, and but I don't mind this. I don't mind answering questions, and believe it or not, most of the questions are around filters.
Yes, I bet. I'm sure, because it's a lot. It's very hard because we've been trained that, I have to remove. But honestly, Robert, for me, it makes sense because when I got really sick, that's part of my journey is I got really sick, right? So my first one was like, okay, I have to kill everything. I got to kill. All these bad things that are on my body. Well, that never worked. What worked was rebuilding the body, and what I'm doing is I'm actually rebuilding my exclusion zone water within myself. So that actually, to me, makes way more sense to, instead of kill everything and remove, to just strengthen from within. Since that's why it makes sense.
That's right. It's about rebalancing, and we make probiotics here as part of our wellbeing business, and so we make a liquid fermented probiotic. But it's all about balancing. You can never knock out the pathogens in your gut, and you're born with them. You got them from your mother. They came through the umbilical cord and the placenta, and so and we're probably ingesting pathogens all the time. So you can't eliminate. All you can do is increase the number of beneficials, and so you do that with a probiotic every day by taking in beneficials and maintain the balance. But you're right. One course of antibiotics will probably destroy your gut for at least 2 years unless you're taking a probiotic to replace them. So your whole immune system is highly dependent on the functioning of your gut, because 70% of your immune system is around your gut function. So that's just as important as drinking structured water is.
Yes, 1,000,000%.
And then it's the amount of water that you drink. A good formula is take your weight, let's say in if you can convert, if it's in pounds, or you'd have to convert it to kilos. But the formula we use is take your weight in kilos, multiply it by 30, and that'll give you the number of milliliters of water to drink. And then you can just divide it by 4, because you need to drink the water before a meal and then wait 1.5 hours after eating. Otherwise, you dilute stomach acid. And the stomach acid there is to unfold proteins, release amino acids, and break down food. And I think a big mistake in people is drinking fluids in the 1.5 hours after eating.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, this has really been such a great conversation, Robert, and we really appreciate your time and all the wisdom and all the knowledge that you've given our audience. And I'm excited to learn more and to get my own MEA water device over here. So really, really exciting times. And thank you for all the research that you've done. It's amazing stuff. So we really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. And I'll email to you today the latest version of the PowerPoint, so you can, perhaps if we have another conversation later on, and we can get into the consciousness of water.
Yeah,
Yes,
we'd love that. That would be amazing. That'd be a
look
great
forward to
combo.
it.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Okay, thank you.